What does it feel like to be hungry? What does it feel like to get out of school and the sun's going down and it's dark and there's violence in your neighborhood and you're scared, you're nervous, you finally make it home, you go to the refrigerator to grab something to eat, and you realize that the refrigerator is unplugged. You try to get some water, you realize the water's off, and you go into the room with your two brothers, try to put a cover over you just to get some warmth and some rest. Poverty. Imagine that. In 1943, Maslow provided a formula which said the human motivational theory, which had a whole hierarchy of needs. And one thing he pointed out is that there are deprivation needs. Food, water, air, rest, safety. These are things that we all need. He also went on to say if these deprivation needs are not met, a person, a human being, me, you, would do anything to meet that need. Imagine that, doing anything to meet that need. Sometimes you see people and they're homeless and they're going to the trash can and we turn the other way and we judge them. We see on TV communities with violence, guns, drugs, and then when the community stands up and they don't want to take it anymore, we judge them. "77 years ago, Maslow laid out this foundation for us. And yet, still, we judge people when their deprivation needs are not met. I'm Dr. Beidleman. I'm in education. I've been in education for over 25 years, believe it or not. I went to K-12 schools in Ohio. I went to college in Virginia. I moved to the District of Columbia, and I've worked in 3 of the largest school districts in the country. I worked in over 12 schools, high schools, middle schools, all kinds of different communities. I've seen poverty. I've had classes where the whole class was filled with students who were impoverished. I've had classes where only one student was impoverished. It didn't matter if a student was in a Section 8 housing development or if a student lived in the basement of a suburban community. Poverty is poverty. I want to share a story with you. Back in 1998, and in teachers, we all have these moments, and we call them lollipop moments, if you want to call that, where we have these aha moments. It's like a great experience. What it is, it's when we're doing something with students, and what happens is the teacher becomes the student. And we learn more from the student than they are learning from us. So in 1998, I had that moment, and what I used to do is, with all of my kids, I just make this circle at the end of the year. And we used to have a great conversation about our future, and our goals, and our life, and different things that we've been doing. And what I would do is I would tell my story about growing up in poverty and how I raised myself out of poverty by my bootstraps. And kids love that story. And then I would let each student tell their own individual story. Well, this one year, one of my students, my favorite student, the teachers can say what they want. This is my favorite student. She did everything right. She color-coded her notebook, used the highlight, everything you could ask a student. Her note-taking was unbelievable. Keisha was my favorite student. And so we went around the room and finally came to her, and Keisha started, and she said, well, I just want to tell my story because most of you don't know, but I want to share it with you. She said, well, my story started a year ago, how I got motivated. She said, you all know, and we knew this. She loved cookies. She would bring in cookies on every holiday for everyone in the class. And they were really good. And so she said a year ago, I was going to my grandmother's house to make cookies as we usually do. And I left my brothers and my mom and dad at home and was going over to spend the night. It's our tradition with my grandmother to do. So they made cookies all evening. And that night she went to sleep. She said she was woken up. And she said usually there's so much hustle and bustle in the neighborhood, you kind of sleep through it. But she said, I woke up because I heard my grandmother at the door. Like most 11, 12-year-olds, she was curious and went to the edge of the steps to look down, and she saw a police officer there, talking to her grandmother. She saw her grandmother drop to her knees. She was worried, and she started to come down the steps, and her grandmother stopped her, said no. Her uncle, who was staying in the next room, quickly came out and went downstairs and was talking with the grandmother and talking to the officer. When the officer left, Keisha heard the door close and she began to walk downstairs and she saw her uncle crying. She saw her grandmother crying. See, that night, Keisha found out that she lost her whole immediate family. Her brothers, her mom, her dad, in a fire at their home. So here it is, Keisha, who came in every day, smiling, telling us this story. She went on to say, Dr. B, you would have been so proud of me at the funeral. No one knew that I was going to say anything. I got up. I started talking about my brothers. I said, for both of my brothers, I will continue to root for your favorite team. I will continue to shoot foul shots and make 5 out of 5. She said, for my father, I will continue to strive towards excellence in everything I do in education. She said, for my mom, I will be a doctor one day. I will learn how to save burn victims. That touched all of us. And one of our kids, who usually was a little troublesome, he looked over at her and said, Keisha, you the shit. And usually I would stop him, but he was right. And as we were leaving class, I stopped her and I said, Keisha, why didn't you tell me all this time? I would have treated you different. I would have done some things different. I would have not been as hard on your papers, and I used to write you all that critical feedback. And she said, Mr. B, stop. This is my favorite class. You're my favorite teacher. She said, you never treated me that way. You always had high expectations for me. You always expected better from me. She said, you took my picture of my family out the center of my binder, and you made me put it on the top because you told me that family was everything. You treated me no different than any other student. She said, you remind me of my father. She said, you're not as big as him, mine is the height. But she said all of those things made her excel. So I thought about that. And what I want to try to do is try to give everyone some ideas and some concepts from Keisha's story that we can all use with all of our students. Because I had a presupposition of poverty. For me, there was a certain way it looked, a certain way it sounded. And when you see it as an educator, as a teacher, as a first responder, we care about people. We care. Our first idea is to do more for them, to treat them special. Well, what Keisha taught me is that poverty can be right next to you smiling, can be enjoying having a good time. And so the first thing I want to make sure that everyone is left with is that our mindset, Carol Dweck put out work about mindset. Now we need to apply it to poverty. Poverty is not always, doesn't always look like we think it's supposed to look. Keisha, that kid coming and smiling every day, was on the Social Security income of her grandma. But she came in looking great every single day. And what resonated with her was that I didn't treat her good, that I held her accountable. Next thing, it's not okay not to try. Every day, I tell all my students, you have to put it forth effort. Effort is everything. You're never going to get where you want to go if you don't put in the work. If you don't put in the effort. And as a teacher, as an educator, one thing we all have to do is, even when they're correct, even when she was right, I still gave her alternate strategies of what she could have done differently. Even when people are correct, you still give them that extra feedback to strive for greatness. And also, never apologize for rigor. Sometimes during that math class and the problem's really hard and she says, well, this is a really hard problem. Never apologize for rigor. Never apologize for advancing someone's knowledge. And finally, after you've done all of those things, when you're dealing with students in poverty, let them be them. Let them use their street courage, their street bravery, their street tenacity, their swag. Let them use it. And when they use it, it will be a platform for educational engagement. It will motivate them to be successful. Don't stop it. Don't cut it off. And if we do all of these things, look at the smiles we will create before our time. Thank you so much.